Welcome back to Building SY Mistress, everybody. In this episode, it'll be all about continuing the work with this great hard dodger. I really am very, very happy with the outcome of this. As you'll see along the way, building this involves a lot of work, and for that matter, looking at all of the clips, it's going to be 3 episodes until you see this finished. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate you becoming a subscriber to follow Mistress's journey. So now, into more details about what it took me to build this great steel hard dodger. Well, it's the next day. These are now dry, and so the plan of attack now, 2 each need to be welded together to double up the actual beams. I'll get to that soon, but first of all, there's quite a bit of preparation and organising I need to do in the cockpit on that hard dodger. I've hung up some sheets and I've got the leather blankets down, so let's go and have a look at that. So what I need to do here, all of these edges that this pipe's going to be attached to, all need to be cleaned up. They've got surface rust on them, and so that all needs to be cleaned up. And also, underneath those 2 pipes that are in place, I can't really get to that to clean it properly, for one thing, but the other thing is, now that I've had a good look at everything again, I think they're not going to be in exactly the right position, so I'm going to remove those pipes. By removing those, I'll be able to get to the plate under there and clean it up properly and get that epoxy primer undercoat on it to protect it. So it's going to be a bit of grinder work, getting everything cleaned up, and for that reason, that's why I've got all of these leather blankets laid out. Those little tiny grinding pieces get absolutely everywhere, and so it's always good to make a bit of an effort to collect most of it, just to reduce those bits lying around and rusting. All of the decks here will be re-sanded, re-undercoated and top-coated down at the boatyard. So the plan of attack here is I've got these 2 beams clamped between the bench here as well as at the ends, and I'm just going to tack those together. I'll probably just put say 4 or 5 tacks on the top, flip it over, do the same on the bottom, only with a longer run of weld on the bottom, and then that will give me the beam that I'm after in terms of strength. Do the same with the others, of course. Then I can take those up and start fitting them. I've built this frame just out of clamps and timber in order to be able to support the steel beams, and of course I can adjust all of this so that I can get the position of those steel beams in the right place. And once I've got that first one in the right place, obviously I'll move on to that next one. First things first though, and I'm just really enjoying getting a visualization of what this is going to look like. The height is really good. When I stand up, I'll be able to just see over the top of it, but it's not going to be much in order to go underneath it when going below. So fingers crossed that it's all going to come off as planned. But now it's time to get that first steel beam, put it in place and see what it looks like. Well, getting this beam in was the easy one. This next one is a little bit more complicated, and that's because the work that I did before, I did end up with a bit of a messy sort of a corner and join there because I really wasn't sure how I was going to actually have it all come together and get everything to fit. So now I've got to deal with it, and that's okay. I made up this little template of the beam and got that angle right, and just making sure I get the angle of the cut correct. Everything's going to be crossed that it comes out all right, and I say that because there's just not a lot of room there to get the grinder in and sort of fix things up. Hooray! Here I am, and here we are. This is another significant milestone. I'm about to lift the main plate up. I've got these beams in now, of course, and I've given them a little tickle with the grinder just to take any little bumps off. So they're all now finished, but I did want to explain to you that when people ask, do I make mistakes? I did with these. I actually forgot to allow for the depth of those beams when I lofted those lines, and so I went to the trouble of getting those bent up per that lofting line. Brought up the first one, tacked it in place, brought up the second one, upon which realised that is not going to work. It didn't take me long to figure out that I had just forgot to allow for the depth of these beams, which meant removing them, re-lofting the right lines, and just taking out some of the bend in those so that now they are in the right position. I'm just going to get a friend who's going to get the forklift, and we're just going to lift it up through this starboard side here, hopefully at the right height where I can just slide it on top, and then it'll be the work, of course, to get that plate to fit on the pipe around the perimeter and fixed for good. first look, and it's looking good. That template all those years ago, it's gonna be freaking close. So the next thing I need to do is get the pipe around the perimeter fitted to these corners, which will tie in the roof to the sides and the front panels. And as I've mentioned before, I'm using this rather heavy walled and galvanized water pipe. It's 25 millimeters in diameter, but has 3 millimeter wall thickness, so very strong, and also gives plenty to weld to. So this is the first piece, which is the front piece, and I've already used a pipe bender just to give a bit of radius to that. I've got 5 to do one at a time. Some of them have rather unusual angles, which I want to get the cuts right so that I don't have too much of a gap that I'll have to fill up with weld. And of course, once they're all in place, I can then start clamping down on that roof panel to get that in place. Well, I tell you what, this has come up pretty freaking close. I definitely am happy. It's just a little bit too long. Obviously, I'd rather have it too long than too short, but let me show you. I'm pretty damn pleased with all those years ago cutting this up. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm definitely happy that this has come out the way it has. So as you can see with that front edge, it's lined up very nicely. And as we go along the edge here, it does run off that pipe. The clamp blocks that a little bit, but when you get to this corner, you'll see I've marked with the black texture there where it does need to go. And so there's just about probably 10 mil on this bottom edge. It's even all the way along. Otherwise, that has a slight wedge to it, to the corner. But yes, very pleased because, as I say, at least it's not too short. Well, that's got all that Dodger in place. It's all been fully welded on the inside here. That took a lot longer than I thought. So now it's on to getting the main sheet Traveller fitted on top of the hard Dodger here, which was always my plan. Instead of having it in the cockpit, which I don't like, as with everything, there's pros and cons, but I prefer it out of the cockpit so you're not tripping over it. So of course the downside is you've got to think about running the lines in a way that you can access them easy enough. So what I've come up with is basically getting a bit of flat bar. I'm going to bend that down. It's not going to go right down hard onto the Dodger. That's too much of a bend. I've been in touch with Ronstan, long conversations with them about what I can do and the limits, and they've run it all through their tech guys. It needs to go about another half of what I've already bent now. I'll make up some brackets which will be welded to the Dodger itself, and that shouldn't go anywhere, and I'm so pleased to have got this sorted. Now it's just a matter of working out exactly the height for those little brackets at the end, cut them up and weld it all in place. That's a wrap for now, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thank you patrons as always, and thanks to all of the new subscribers. Until next episode.